I must have been about 3 or 4 when we moved to Johnson Street. Novelty Park, American Legion Post, was backed up to 51 Johnson Street. It was on Division Street. And it actually wrapped around 2 sides of it. Because 51 Johnson had Novelty Park property on the east and south side of it. And then there was a vacant lot on the corner. So it sort of stood by itself. The thing we used to do at Novelty Park was they had weddings. And after Polish weddings, Italian weddings, and Irish weddings, and after a little bit, nobody knew, of course there are kids all over the place. The wedding party had kids galore, and we just go right in with them, and hit the chow line. And nobody paid. The guys were all half drunk, the women were half drunk, going around dancing and raising hell. They didn't pay any attention. We'd have a snack go and see what they got. That was a big time for the wedding season. Novelty Park had a carnival every year, and we'd go over and play over there and run around. And the girls all wore dresses with big bows tied in the back, and we'd catch some of the teenage boys with one of their girlfriends, and we'd undo her big bow, and then the guy comes, he'd have to leave his girlfriend trying to retie her bow and chase after us, because he never could catch us, and we'd have a head start. And that was our big fun in the thing. The other fun was to hang out the windows of the 3rd floor, because my brothers and I lived on the 3rd floor, had bedrooms on the 3rd floor. My Aunt May had 1 bedroom. We had 3 bedrooms to choose from, and we'd alternate to many, whatever, one reason or other, just whim, I guess. But we'd hang out the window and watch the carnival going late at night. And the property in that corner between Johnson Street, not sidewalk, went in the sidewalk then, Johnson Street and our house was covered with poison ivy. And I would get the hellacious poison ivy every year. As soon as we got here to Alabama, first thing I did was get into some poison sumac, which I didn't recognize. And I got it all over again. But that's the only time I've had it for years and years. They used to put the chair planes in that corner because it would swing out over the poison ivy, but the next thing along the fence was a tattoo tent, and these young guys would all go and get beard up, because they had beer there, had beer every place in Rhode Island, and then they'd get tattooed, and then they'd get sick to their stomach, and they roll around in the poison ivy, because that was the next grassy looking area. And we said, nobody told them, well, we didn't tell them, who tells the drunk what he's drunk, he's a sick, a sick drunk, plus who'd pay attention to a kid. The rest of the year was just open. We played ball there, baseball. We used to play rotation because we never had enough kids for a full team, or 2 teams. So we just line up and throw numbers or make some kind of a contest to see who's pitch and catch, 1, 2, 3 batters, and then start the infield and the outfield. And so you start in the outfield, you move up a position each time. pretty soon you're pitching, then you're catching, and then you bat. And you could bat as long as you could get on base. And you got to hit, you go back. If you're not, you're back to the outfield. You start all over again. Nobody else will move up. And that to me was a way to teach kids baseball, because we didn't have any adults teaching us anything, so we was just doing what we thought was working. There was a long porch that they converted into storage, and it was set off the ground about 2-3 feet, and you could crawl under there, which the foul balls would roll under there. Crawl under there, and you could see into the bar, which was also a book. And one time we were playing ball, and we heard the cops coming, and one of the cops, a guy named Dirty Neck Burtwell, he had a given name, but it wasn't. We always called him Dirty Neck. He was a plainclothes cop, and he'd walk around town, and he'd be using store windows as reflecting to watch people, But nobody ever saw him do anything but that. So nobody told him there was going to be a raid that day, because they usually announce the raids, But some of the kids' fathers got pinched. My father was working, so he didn't get pinched. I got carted off in the paddy wagon. And hey, there goes your dad, there goes your dad. And then we went back to play ball. Because it was, they raided us. You get $10 fine for frequenting a bookie joint. Moose was a numbers runner. And a numbers runner, they used to, in the newspaper, they used to print the treasury balance every day. There was a financial data from the federal government, and one of the things was treasury balance. Well, the mob found that if they printed up little tickets with the last so many digits, if you got the whole thing, you got the world, but I don't think anybody ever got that. But so the Moose was the runner. He'd run around all the bars selling their tickets. He was a little Frenchman lived across the street from the logged in, more or less. I think he was a house two down. Anyway, he always finished up his run there. He had all these bars, and he'd come in with, everybody be waiting for the Moose. Because when the Moose come in, he was thirsty, and he'd sell the tickets at a discount. He just, whatever he had to pay, I think he got a 50-50 cut. So he'd sell the tickets right away for half price so he could get his beer. He was a very thirsty little guy. I never knew what his name was. No, I don't think anybody else would either. It's just Moose. Louise Perry was, she and her sister and her brother were raised by their grandmother, Mrs. Perry. Very nice old lady. Not old, she's probably 40, To me, an old lady. But Louise was in high school, and she used to babysit for my mother when they went out. And her boyfriend was Ivano Gentini. He was a bookie. He was a bookie in training, I guess, at that point. But he ended up being a bookie, which was a respectable profession in Rhode Island. I mean, hell, the books all over the place. And they would occasionally read a book. But so he'd come over whenever she babysit. She babysits, they'd come over. And when my mother moved into the senior citizen housing, the last move she made, the Louise was already in there, and she was the first person to greet her after all these years. They had sort of passed in the ships of the night, living in the same town. But so anyway, so she saw Louise. My mother, one time I was working at the First National store, and she was in bed, which was, she must have been sick, because she never was otherwise in bed in the daytime. And I got home from school, and when I was going out to go to work, she said, "Here, take this 50 cents and go buy and bet it on this horse." And so I went by, found the book. The horse is still running. I don't know who gave her the tip, but it was a bad one. I put that on Facebook, and Roberta was, "You mean my mother was betting on horses?" That was. But my Uncle Norm, who was a Frenchman, was he and my father used to go periodically. They go to a place called Hattie's. This lady ran a card game. I think maybe once a month she'd run a card game, and he'd go down there and play cards. And my mother didn't like that he was playing cards. Didn't like that he was drinking beer, and but she'd go with her brother-in-law, he'd go. And I never found out where Hattie's was. I never got to go there. Norm was a tire rethreader. And his place was across the street from the Boys Club. When we'd go down there, we'd wander in, go see Uncle Norm. Norm, how you doing? He'd be there. Put another tire on, slap the form on it, and glue it down, put it in, throw it in a stack. We go watch that for a little bit, and then go across to the Boys Club. Because we had a schedule at the Boys Club. You had to be on time for your class. And you do gym and swim. I always went for the swim. Man, I went for the swim, but I went for the shower. Because I'd be the first kid in the shower if I could make it. As fast as I could get in there, stand in that shower in that hot water. Oh man, I'd get in that shower and I'd stay in there, and the kids would come in. Most of the kids would come in. The guys would say, "Hey, put some soap on it. Put some soap on that. Wash those feet." I'd be standing there saying, "Hey kid, in the tub, in the water." They'd have to throw me out of the shower. I loved it so. But we learned to swim by ourselves. They didn't have swim classes. You got in and you stayed until you could swim across the pool. You had to stay behind the line. And so you'd practice if you were interested, because most times they'd play in the water, splashing, playing Marco Polo, and so you just learn to swim by yourself. I was probably 6 or 7 7 or 8 when I joined, and then maybe till I was 12 or so. I think when I was in 5th grade, I moved to Darlington, and I think I quit going to the Boys Club then, because it was, twice as far, and none of the guys that I was associated with then went down there, because some of them were Protestants and they go to the Y. We couldn't go to the Y because it was Young Men's Christian Association. You're Catholic, you went to the Boys Club. You didn't go there. Now they can go to the Y, I guess. Probably got a dispensation for that. Jim and Jack Ahern and I we'll go down to the dump and hunt snakes. There are no poisonous snakes in Rhode Island. So we hunt snakes. Any snake you got was a good snake. Take us to school. And then the nuns would you figured out you had something. So they said, what is that? Snake. Out the window. And I kept trying to throw it out. In St. Joseph's, they had a girls' door and a boys' door, opposite ends of the stool. And the classroom that I remember mostly with the window was on the girls' side, and there was a strip of green grass. And I'd try to throw the snake into that green grass. And then after school, I'd run over and try to find them. Never found one of them. I don't know where they went. Now, in football, we had Big Jim Duffy. He looked older than the teenagers, as I remember. Now, he'd take us up to the high school field, which was just stone bleachers and dirt. Just, I don't think grass even grew there in the summertime. But we'd play make-up football, depending on how many kids showed up. And I got a unsportsmanlike conduct for cussing some kid. I call him an SOB. Big Jim, no cussing. He was a good guy. Jimmy Duffy was he was one of my brother Jim's friends. Because even though at a certain age we quit playing with each other, we just kind of went our secret ways. When we were little kids, it was the three of us. Then we kind of split up. And Duff was one of his friends. But he and I struck it up, friendship. We'd go to the boys' club together. So the first thing I heard about Jimmy Duffy, though, my mother was talking to one of her friends, Mrs. Lanigan. It was some Irish lady anyway. And the lady said, I had the strangest experience last night. She said, the nuns are selling tickets. The nuns, during the Depression, the nuns would be selling a book of tickets, and every kid in the school got a book of tickets to sell. And of course, they're selling them, $10 or $1, $3 for $1, whatever the price was, depending on what they raffled it off a car. And no matter who won it, it was somebody who already had a car would get it, Somebody that needed a car never won it. But anyway, she said, with my daughter, the woman said, with my daughter, and the daughter downstairs, she said, what can I do? I already bought tickets. So this boy knocked on the door, and he said, he's selling tickets for the nuns. And he said, I've got my daughter and the other daughter. He said, she told him, I'm all booked up. I'm all sold out. And the kid said, well, I guess I won't eat supper tonight. And she said, what do you mean? What do you mean? And my mother's telling me this story. And he said, your mother won't give you food? No. She'll give me food. But the sisters depend on us to sell us tickets. She said, and if I don't sell the tickets, I just won't feel like eating. She said, what can I do? I bought a ticket, And my mother said, I started to laugh. I said, you met Jimmy Duffy. Because he had a reputation for being a BS artist of the first degree. I mean, he was full of it. Well, one day, he and I went to the boys' club. And on the bridge, Main Street Bridge in Pawtucket, there was a White Tower hamburger joint on the north corner, actually hanging out, it's propped up, hanging out over the water with the props on holding it. And on the south side, down Riverside, there was a little hot dog stand. I don't think it even, I don't remember the name of it. But anyway, we got close to it. Duff said, why don't you go ahead? He said, I'm going to go in there I'm going to go into this place. He says, you keep on walking. So I knew Duff, so I kept on walking. And Duff went in, and he told the guy at the counter, he said, I get a pint of milk, or half a pint of milk. And the guy turns as though he's going to the milk locker, which was back to the back. And Duff stuck his hand in the mustard thing, right up to his wrists, and came out running. But the guy, he's done it before, and the guy was ready for him. He vaulted over that counter, came out, and he was right on his tail. They passed me. He got a hold of Duff's neck, shaking the hell out of Duff. So Duff was there, pleading for his life, begging, quoting his mother, God, everybody, to save him. And all the time he's doing that, he's rubbing mustard all over the back of that guy's shirt. And I'm walking along, I see this hilarious scene, and I biting my cheeks to keep from laughing. And the guy finally gives Duff one shake and threatens his life, and his mother's life, and everybody else's life around him, and gives him a shove and says, they don't ever want to see him again. So Duff takes off running. And I walk by this guy, the guy going back, muttering to himself. And I took off running because when he got in that restaurant and found all that mustard, but he was going to be looking for Duff. So we hightailed it up by the TK Club and on up. We knew how to get out of there. So we got away from there. And I never will forget that guy with the mustard all over the back of his shirt. About 20 to 25 years later, I was on an IG team from Shorefield, South Carolina. We went down to Homestead Air Base in Florida. And I went over to the Oak Club for dinner. I walked in there, one of the other guys was with me, and went in, and I looked, there's an air crew sitting at the table, and of course air crews would always come, they flying in, they'd be in their flight suits. And I looked at the table, and they're sitting at the head of the table, and all his glory was Jimmy Duffy. And I thought, oh my God. And he hadn't changed a bit. The air crew, obviously, he was aircraft commander, which was a big deal. He was it. So he's sitting at the table, entertaining these guys with his humor. And these guys had heard all these stories about Jimmy Duffy. He's telling these stories on himself. And so I walked up, I said, what the hell are you doing here? He's driving around the country with a nuclear bomb in the back seat, B-52, for God's sake. And if the Pawtucket people from my parents' generation knew Jimmy Duffy was doing that, they'd all get in their bomb shelters.